Your hand if you consider yourself a friend of Moses or Will. Raise your hand if you consider yourself a friend of Will, friend of Moses, classmate Will, Moses. Yeah, you should all be sitting up here. We have seats for you. And everyone else is welcome to find a seat toward the front of the sanctuary. And as we find our seats, we sing together. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Somewhere on your seat or next to your seat, you should find a siddur, a prayer book. The prayer book says Mishkan Tefillah on the cover. If you look around and have a book like that, will you raise it high over your head? If you have a book that says Mishkan Tefillah, raise it high over your head, really high, really high. If you have a book that says Mishkan Tefillah, raise it high over your head. Those are the ones, very good. You can put them down now. If you're looking and you can't find a book like that, please raise your empty hand. So one of our amazing greeters in the back can come give you a prayer book. If you need a prayer book, please raise your hand, your empty hand high, so we can see it. I see a couple of empty hands here in the front. Thank you, Annette and Stephanie and Karen. I see Nancy's hand raised. Is that a raised hand? Yes, we definitely need a book up here. And anyone else who needs one, raise your hand. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Later. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Can we all sing these words together? It's really easy. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. These prayer books, these siddurim, open from right to left because they're in Hebrew mostly. And if you're joining us on Zoom, a link to a virtual edition should be in the chat. We open them now to page 192. Page 192, following the lower right-hand corner. If you look in the lower right-hand corner and see two numbers, never fear, we'll be referring to the ones in brackets, in blue brackets. So look for the blue bracket in page 192 in the lower right-hand corner, and on that page you should see in big blue words, Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. Let's try it together. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. A little louder from this section. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. Vani beroch aslecha avo beitecha. Eshtachave el heichal kodechecha be'yiratecha. Ma Tovu, everyone. Ma Tovu. A little louder from the pews. Ma Tovu. Yes, I'm talking about all yous. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. Four more times, each one a little louder. Ma Tovu. Ma Tovu. We do even better. Ma Tovu. Yes, indeed. Ma Tovu. In the middle of page 192. Vani tefilati l'cha Adonai et ratzo Elohim berov chasdecha הנני באמת נשאר.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is so good to see all of you this morning, to be together in this Mishkan, in our sanctuary together this morning. What we just sang are the words that we sing in our tradition in gratitude for being able to come into a house of worship that belongs to the Jewish people, to be together under this, what we call it, like a tent of Jacob. And so it matters to be together. And you know, for 2 years we've been in and not in, and some of us in and some of us not in, and all the things for 2 years, and it still really matters. We're still really paying attention to the fact that we can gather here. It's a big deal. Now, in order to be here, as you know, you needed to show your vaccination on the way in, and you need to wear a mask over your nose and your mouth the whole time that you're here. So that's how everybody's going to feel safe, and everybody's going to feel like it's okay. And if at any point you're feeling like you want to make yourself a little bit more space, you know there's lots of empty space all around, and you can get yourself some more space, but we're so glad that you're here. And let me tell you about what we're going to be doing together this morning. So we use this Siddur called Mishkan Tefillah, and in the Siddur, in the prayer book, we're going to be praying mostly in the Hebrew. And so you'll find that mostly on the right page of every page spread. And right across from the Hebrew, you'll find the transliteration, so that if you don't read Hebrew or know how to sing in Hebrew, you can follow with every single word right there. And we invite you to follow with us with every single word. Whether you're Jewish or not, whether you've done it before or not, whether you've been here before or not, we want you in it with us to the degree that you're comfortable being in it with us. And below that Hebrew, you'll find the translation so you can see what we're saying. And then on the left page, in every page spread, in almost every page spread, you'll find other words in English that are composed by contemporary people, mostly, that are saying, okay, let me tell you what this has meant to me, this idea, this prayer, this expression. Let me share my poetry with you that has other imagery, other ways into the feeling we're going for here. And a lot of what we're going for here is actually feeling. We're wanting to feel this morning. And let me tell you what we're wanting to feel. What we're wanting to feel is gratitude mostly, is noticing that there are myriad things to be grateful for that we sometimes miss in daily life. Because there's a lot of running around in daily life. There's a lot of busyness. There's a lot of things that come onto a device that we have in our pocket that buzzes or rings or beeps. And if you have one of those things, you're going to turn that off. You're just going to make sure it's off. You don't need it. You don't need to look at it. You don't need to be reminded that there's something you're supposed to be doing, because right now there's nothing else you're supposed to be doing. And that right there is the essence of Shabbat. There's nothing else you're supposed to be doing. You don't have to worry about the to-do list. You don't have to worry about the unread emails. You don't have to worry about the social media posts that might be very enticing. You don't have to worry about all of the noise of our world. You don't have to worry about your homework or any tests. You don't have to worry about a work deadline. You don't. Right now, you don't. Because the whole idea of Shabbat is that we get a day away from all of that. A day to breathe. A day to remember how much there is to be grateful for. So we carve out this space. And it's hard in modern society to carve out a space like that. To put boundaries and say, okay, not today. That will be waiting for us. All of it will be waiting for us. We can be sure. But not today. No. Today is just for gratitude. This is a glorious day on which to be gathering. Maybe you want to be grateful for the sun, or the sky, or the warm air in February. Let's not think too much about that. But there's a lot to be grateful for. Even with the looming columns that I just referenced, there's a lot to be grateful for. And what we do is we hold off all that other stuff. And we just try to get here. We just try to arrive here, just get fully here in our bodies, in our hearts, words, and to remember, oh yeah, my life is full of blessing. A million things. I could list them. I'm going to try. I'm going to try this morning to sing and to use these words and to use togetherness and to use the fact that, and to use love and community and friendship and family and all those things to remember, oh my gosh, there's so much to be grateful for. That's what we're doing this morning. Now we're going to say the name of God a lot of times because almost every prayer talks about God. And maybe you're somebody who thinks, I don't really know how to connect to that. It's not my thing. I don't really feel it. Do not let that stop you, because this idea of taking time just to get in touch with gratitude is so valuable. That would be such a shame if you let that stop you. So when you hit that word and you think, your job is to translate it. Translate it into something that you can use to connect you to gratitude. Because what it's supposed to be, the name of God, is supposed to remind you of how small you are and how big it all is. The cosmos, time, love, the ecosystem, the whole big thing that we find ourselves in. Wow. That's what the name of God is supposed to do for you. And if it's not doing that, then make it be something that will do that for you so that you can be grateful. Because that is so important. We want you to leave here lighter, fuller, more joyous. That's what we're doing. So do it with us. All right. We're going to go from here to page 194, where we have a prayer in gratitude for the miracle of our bodies, the intricate working system that keeps us alive every day. That is wondrous. And we're actually not going to sing most of the words on this page. We're mostly going to sing words that Cantor Writer is going to offer that are simple and you can follow and you're going to listen and they're mostly in English. And when we get to the Hebrew, it will be the last line of Hebrew on this page. And then we're going to go from there to the miracles of every day, which you find on page, we'll tell you where then. And those are every morning we say these. And it's just simple things about waking up that we could be grateful for if we were paying attention. And then we're going to go from there to Psalm 150. And Psalm 150 is our big, rousing hallelujah. And that's basically what that prayer is. It's basically hallelujah. So if you've been stuck on the Hebrew up until then, you can for sure join with that. Hallelujah. And I'll give you more instructions when we get there. Right? Page 194, gratitude for the miracle of our bodies.
I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. I'm perfect the way I am, and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. Sing "Oh" with me. I thank you for my life, body and soul. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. Help me realize I am beautiful and whole. Perfect the way I am and a little broken too. I'm perfect the way I am and a little broken too. I will live each day as a gift I give to you. I will live each day as a gift I give to you, my God, my God. Oh, sing it higher. Oh, sing it louder. Oh, the middle of 194. אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לשכל בינה להבחין בין יום ובין לילה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, רוקח עברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מתיר אסורים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, זוקף כפופים. 200. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, רוקע הארץ על המים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המכין מצעדי גדר. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן ליעב כוח. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. 202. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who made me in the image of God. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me free. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has made me Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael v'tifara. Rabbi Timona, what's going to happen next?
So glad you asked. We're coming to Psalm 150, as I talked about. It's going to be on page 218. And what I want to do is invite all of the 7th graders who are here to come close around us here. And maybe I think I want to include any Yachad families who are here at this point. Because, you know, every Yachad family is supposed to be here at this point. And so we want to be so thankful to you, talk about gratitude. Come on up. Come close to us. There's not a lot of you, but we're glad you're here. We're going to sing Psalm 150 and kind of rouse the energy in this room. And I think if you're in the pews, we're going to ask you to stand so that everybody's up. And we're going to try to build up some energy in this room as we sing together in gratitude.
Yachad families, come up. Surround the lectern. you. This was all crafted very mindfully, very intentionally, wasn't it?
Yes, for the next thing, because the next thing is we're going to take that energy and we're going to make this the friendliest place you've ever been to in Brooklyn. So you're going to find someone you don't know, you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to wish them a Shabbat Shalom. If you're on Zoom, you're going to go to a breakout room, you're going to turn on your camera, you're going to say hi and Shabbat Shalom and come right back.
This is Luke, in case you didn't remember.
All right, well done. Thank you for being so friendly. We're going to return to our seats, but we're going to return to our seats. All right, we have a very special moment now. So what's going to happen next is that Moses and Will are going to receive a talit, each of them, from their family members. They're going to receive, Moses is going to receive his from his grandparents, Annabelle and Dodd, and Will is going to receive his from his father Josh. And first he's going to keep up it on just right. It's going to take a minute. While that's happening, I'm going to tell you about what they're about to receive. This is a talit. It's a prayer shawl, and we wear it when we pray in the mornings, and there's not like a one correct color or pattern or anything or fabric, but what they all have in common is this. On the four corners, we have these fringes called tzitzit, and they symbolize the mitzvot of the Torah and God's name. And when we wear it, it's like we're putting on our shoulders the way of life of the Jewish people. And so as Will and Moses become B'nai Mitzvah today, they have done so much work to get ready for this day. And it kind of feels like a conclusion, like, whoa, they did all this work and they did it. And on one level, that's right, but on another level, that's not at all right. Because it's just the beginning of their whole rest of their lives living as Jewish people. And that's what this moment symbolizes. They're going to say the blessing. I'm going to get the microphone near them. They're going to say the blessing. And then they're going to put the talit on their shoulders.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hitzatef b'tzitzit.
Amen. Awesome. You can go back to your seats. Moses and Will will stay here. So we continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 224. And once again, we all rise facing this way toward Jerusalem. יתקדש וחיינו ביומךו וחיינו בבית ישראל והגדלנו ישראל קרבי בבינו אמן יהי שמך לבנה לעד ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויפעל יתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתקדש שמי לקודשה וריחו לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושמחתה ונחמתה דאמירה מעלה וינהגו אמן 226 ברכו את אדוני המבורך Amen.
This is our prayer and gratitude for the beauty of nature. Please join me in the middle of page 229 in the English. You are praised, who rolls out the rough, raw clay of the universe into delicate vessels of light. And from nothing at all, we can perceive in a world that has turned old, a shimmering new creation right before our eyes, made this moment just for us. How much of life reveals your presence? How much Torah unfolds from each new flower, from each new wave that breaks upon the sea? You are praised, who forms from the clay that cloaks our lives, the delicate vessels which contain our light. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaNeorot. We come to page 230 in Ahava Rabbah. This is our prayer in gratitude for learning. With a never-ending process of learning, there's always more. It always goes deeper. It always goes wider. There's always more to learn and understand. Even when we think we know in any given situation, even if we think in a certain conversation or a certain moment, we think, I know all about this. If we pay attention, if we really pay attention, there's always something more to be learned. Always. And in this prayer, we describe that capacity given to us, that we just never stop learning. We describe that capacity as a gift of love. Because, sometimes life is confusing. And confusion can be painful. And the more we understand, when things come together, when they make sense, there's relief from confusion. And that is loving. That is receiving love. Today we have two young people becoming B'nai Mitzvah, growing in their learning in front of our eyes. And all of us can reflect on the ways that we were learning when we were their age, and how we're learning now, still, always.
ושמך גדול סלע להודות לך ולייחדך ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. 232. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. 234. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמן. 240. ברוך אתה אדוני גר ישראל.
A word to the wise, for those who like to know what Kempter Breitzer's up to. Whenever he emphasizes a word, there's always a hidden meaning. He emphasized Mitzvah, which is the same root as this week's Torah portion name. You gotta be like really listening and also know a lot of stuff. But there's always a reason. Okay, we're coming now to the Amidah. And this is our standing prayer. It's also called the Tefillah. This is kind of a central prayer when it all kind of comes together. And in this prayer, we start by talking about ourselves in the context of our ancestors. And then in the third prayer, at the end of the prayer, there's going to be a refrain that we repeat back and forth to each other. Lador vador. Lador vador means from generation to generation. Part of what we're doing today, a lot of what we're doing today, is we're passing Torah to the next generation. And they're receiving it, carrying it, and reading it, and teaching it. And so when we sing Lador Vador, we're going to want you to repeat after us, Lador Vador. We're going to go back and forth. This is such a major idea for us as Jews. We've inherited this tradition, these very prayers. We've inherited from generations who came before us. And we're singing them in our own time in our own way. And we know there's going to be generations who follow us who will be singing these same prayers in their time, in their way. And we pass it from generation to generation. Page 242.
words of these pages, the words we find within ourselves. When we finish our prayers, we may be seated. Page 258. For this prayer, a prayer for peace called Sim Shalom, I'm going to need some help. As we did last week, I want to invite all of the 3rd and 4th and 5th grade Yachat students to come right up here and to surround the Amud, to surround the lectern. Not only so you can be seen and heard, but also so you can use the Amud as a percussive device when the mood arises. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, come up here. And this is a prayer that I know you've been learning about in Yachat Tefillah as well, this prayer for peace. So come all the way around, not just on this side, but all the way around, this side too, behind me, in front of me, right next to the laptop. Just don't touch the laptop, thank you. All right, so this song has a very memorable and repetitive refrain. It means chorus that comes back over and over again. And when it happens, you'll know, and you'll help sing it, and clap it, and bang it, okay? But it's going to start soft. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael amecha acheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad ve'or panecha ki ve'or panecha natatta lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, here we go. Sim shalom tova uvracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael everyone sing shalom, go! את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. For this, instead of clapping, we're going to snap if you can. Ready? Si shalom tova ubracha chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yisrael alecha baruch atah Adonai המברך את עמו ישראל Shalom. Can you sing those last three notes with me? Shalom. Good job. Yasher Koach, third, fourth, and fifth graders.
This is a good moment to teach something, which is that when somebody does something that we think is great in the synagogue, we say Yasher Koach.
Yasher Koach.
That's right. All right. In a moment, we're going to have Seder Kriyat Torah, the service for the reading of Torah. But first, some greetings and announcements from our president, John Horowitz, and our trustee, Joanna Bixby.
Thank you, Rabbi Tomer. Shabbat Shalom. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to welcome everyone here in person today, as well all of you joining us virtually. Mazel tov to Moses and William and to all your friends and family who join us here today. I think I speak for all of us how excited we are to both hear and learn from you. I want to, as always, thank our clergy, Rabbi Timon and Cantor Breitzer. Thank you for leading us this morning in services. I want to thank our executive director, Mark Flaxer, and his staff for all that they do to allow us to be together each and every day. I want to thank Karen Gerwin, who's helping us in the back in person, and Nate Jaffe, who's helping us online. We do have some announcements, and so I'm going to turn it over now to my fellow trustee, Joanna Pressman. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, John. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I echo all of John's welcome and thanks, and a special mazel tov to Moses and Will. Very excited to be with you today. Here are the announcements. We are excited to launch CBE small groups. We're starting off with the following small groups: challah baking, conversational Hebrew, sage discussions, gardening, mahjong, and Union Temple Legacy Circle. I have to say, I feel like I just read off some Jeopardy categories, but they're not Jeopardy categories. They are small groups. You can visit our website, which is cbebk.org, to sign up for one of these groups or suggest a different small group that is of interest to you. If you have any questions, please reach out to Rabbi Jason Gitlin, who is our small groups and community engagement specialist, at jgitlin, G-I-T-L-I-N, at cbebk.org. I also spot him here, so you can even speak to him in person today. Next, did you know that our Chesed group has a solvers team? This group helps congregants find resources for big or small problems, from changing light bulbs to connecting you with support groups and more. You can reach out at chesed@cbebk.org for help. And there are lots of exciting things happening in the next month at CBE. We have another weekend in partnership with Antioch Baptist Church in 2 weeks, and we have multiple Purim plans in the works. Stay tuned for more details next week, and check out the CBE website, which again is cbebk.org, for details about everything that's happening at CBE. Thank you all for being here, and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Joanna. I want to just add a couple things to what she said, and we try to keep the announcements brief, but I kind of can stop myself. One is the small group idea. So you're going to see Rabbi Jason Gitlin. He's going to come up for the first Aliyah. We want everybody to see him. He's our small group specialist, and he's just going to help us form small groups. And why? Why are we doing this? If you saw the video this week, you know, but maybe you didn't see it. The reason why is because when synagogues get really big like ours, almost everybody walks into the room and thinks like, whoa, I don't know most people. There's so many people here. I don't know a lot of people. And we want everybody to have their like home base, their people, their group, their pod, their team, their crew. And so ultimately, we're going to make this into a congregation of small groups. Everybody has a group. And maybe it's going to be about how old your children are that brings you together. Or maybe it's going to be about a life stage you're in. Or maybe it's going to be about one of the interests or described. These are just the first ones, and eventually it's going to be a lot. So we're really excited about that. And I also want to say one other thing. Joanna mentioned Purim coming and is coming, and there's something you can do about Purim right now, which is, you may know, there's a tradition related to Purim, and we're in First Adar, so we're on our way to Purim. called Mishloach Mano, where we send little portions, little sweet goodies to each other. It's just this like lovely practice. And we're matching people for Mishloach Mano this year as we did last year, and there's a form and it's online and you can, the website, and you can just sign up and you'll be assigned 3 people, so small you can totally do this. And then they'll be, everybody will be assigned 3 people and you'll get to meet them, you get to bring them something sweet. It's just a really nice thing. The time to sign up is now, not to wait till Purim because we got to coordinate the thing. So I want to make sure you know that. All right, we are ready for the Torah service. And we are going to invite Harry and Nancy Dodd, Moses' brother and sister, Elizabeth, Julia, and Michael Concanen, his cousins, and Leo Duhl, Will's brother, to open the ark. When Moses and Will have the Torahs in their hands and they're ready to make their way around the room, they're going to be followed by Moses' friends who are here, are invited to join him around the room. And then he says, not yet, but you get ready. Not yet. And then Will's brothers, Leo and Caleb, are going to join him and follow him around the room. We ask everyone to please rise. We're on page 362.
Shabbat
Right. We are on Shabbat Tetzaveh, same root, Tzav. Shabbat Tetzaveh. We're in the book of Exodus. We just last week learned about the rules of the tabernacle, how to build the Mishkan, the portable gathering place, the portable sanctuary. And today, we're going to learn a lot about the priest's clothing. Not clothing today. Soon we're going to make of this. We're going to make a lot of things of this. You're going to be surprised. So we are in Exodus, chapter 27. We're going to start on verse 20. So 27:20. You will find books in the pews that say the Torah on them. That is your tip-off, that they are the Torah. And you were looking...
Well, this is the Torah. I mean, that's...
So true.
But it's all the Torah. It's all yeah.
The Torah. Page 563 is where we are starting. We're going to be calling up different groups of people, and we're starting with Cantor Breitzer's beloved wife, Donna Breitzer, who is coming to Chantora this morning because it is the 30th anniversary of her bat mitzvah today. And she is sponsoring Kiddush in honor of this moment. Little note, you can sponsor Kiddush anytime in honor of any special thing. And it's such a sweet, literally way to include the community in your simcha. So thank you, Donna, for doing that this morning. We're so glad to hear you chant Torah. And even though Donna chants Haftarah on our high holidays, but how long has it been since she chanted Torah?
On Shabbat, it's been a while.
Been a while, so we're excited to hear you. And as mentioned before, we're going to invite forward Rabbi Jason Gitlin to come up for the Aliyah, he's our small group specialist. And anybody who is involved in a small group, signing up for a small group, helping to start a small group. Who knows if you're here today, but if you happen to be here today, there are some people. Come on up and join this.
Yamor Avraham Yoshua ben Avraham Yisrael ben Yoshua Yoshua ben Avraham Yisrael ben Ruach HaKodesh Rani al Torah v'Horach Evnei Beit HaKnesset Tanot V'Zeh.
Baruch Adonai Yisrael.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Borach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'chamanu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen. Ve'ata tetzaveh את בני ישראל, ויקחו אליך שמן זית זך, כתיב למאור, לעלות נר תמיר, באוהל מועד, מחוץ לפרוכת, אשר על העדות, יערוך אותו אהרון, ובניו מעבר הבוקר לפני אדוני, חוקת עולם לדורותם מאת בני ישראל. ואתה הקרב אליך את אהרון אחיך ואת בניו איתו, מתוך בני ישראל לכנו לי אהרון נדב ואביהו אלעזר ואיתמר בני אהרון. ועשית בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך לכבוד ולתפארת, ואתה תדבר אל כל חכמי לב אשר מילאתיו רוח חוכמה, ועשו את בגדי אהרון לקדשו לכנו לי. ואלה הבגדים אשר יעשו חושן ואפוד ומעיל, וכתונת תשבץ מצנפת ואבנת, ועשו בגדי קודש לאהרון אחיך ולבניו לכנו לי. והם ייקחו את הזהב ואת התכלת ואת הארגמן ואת עולת השני ואת השש.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Yasher koach. Yasher koach. And I should have said, not only can you sponsor Kiddush, anybody, but also anybody can chant Torah. You don't even have to be an opera singer to chant Torah here. Anybody can. And all you gotta do is let us know. We'll help you. Kindergartens will help you get ready and everything. And
I guess you also have to be like 12 or 13.
so true, so true. When you're 13 or 12, it'll be your first time, but then from then on, sky's the limit. All right. So we're moving on now to, where are we going? We're on chapter
28,
28.
verse 22.
Okay, 28, 22. So that's page 565 of your Torah commentaries. And we're ready for Moses to come and chant Torah. And we're going to invite his parents, Nancy and Bobby, to come and stand for the Aliyah.
So before they make the blessing, Moses is going to find his spot.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Nevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'asita al ha'choshen, sharshut galut ma'aseh avot, zahav tachor. V'asita al ha'choshen, shtei tavot zahav, v'natata et shtei avotot al shnei ketzot ha'choshen. V'natata et shtei avotot hazahav al shtei hatavot al ketzot ha'choshen. V'et shtei ketzot shtei ha'avotot titen al shtei ha'mishpatzot v'natata al kitzvot ephod al mulpanav. V'asita shtei tavot zahav v'samta otam al shnei ketzot ha'choshen al sefato asher al ever ha'ephod ba'ita. V'asita shtei tavot zahav v'natata otam asher kitzvot ephod v'umatam mimul panav v'umat machrato mimal lechem ha'ephod.
Shekoach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notam b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. All right, now we're going to invite Moses' cousins and aunt, Rachel, Lauren, and Cindy Gerstner.
Yamdu Dodd b'nei Dodd Shalom Mitzvah Rishon L'Aliyah LaTorah. Moses is continuing from verse 28, chapter 28, verse 28.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Nevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'yirkesu et ha'choshen mitavotav et tavot v'umatam ha'ephod v'yiftiu techelet l'chiyot el chesed ha'ephod v'lo yizach ha'choshen ma'al ha'ephod v'nasa Aharon et shmo b'nei Yisrael v'choshen ha'mishpat al libav v'vo'o el ha'kodesh l'zikaron lifnei Adonai tamid v'nasata el chesed ha'ephod el choshen ha'mishpat et ha'arim ve'et ha'tumim v'chayu alei b'Aharon v'vo'o lifnei Adonai l'zikaron v'nasa Aharon et mishpat b'nei Yisrael Aliba, Lifnanai Tamid, Basita, Emil Haifot,
Kelil Techele.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, b'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. We now call forward Moses as a bar mitzvah by his Hebrew name. After I chant it, he's going to take the corner of his talit and touch where he'll continue and give it a kiss before making the opening blessing. Yamod, 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 Abachu bar mitzvah, Moshe, ben Baruch v'natzir aliyah la Torah, chazak ve'amas.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
V'chayav pirosho b'tocho zavaya, lefiv saviv ma'aser kefi tachrai hilo lo yikreya. V'asita al shila rimonei v'chilet v'argaman v'tolat shani al shila saviv v'famonei zacha v'tocham saviv. Hamon zacha v'rimon al shilei hamid saviv. V'chaya al Aharon l'sharet v'nishma kolo v'vo'o al kodesh lifnei Adonai v'teto v'lo yamud v'asita tzit zacha v'chor v'vitokta alav v'tichei hatam kodesh l'Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet b'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yeshua. We take a moment in the middle of reading Torah, stop for a minute. This is our tree of life. Throughout the generations, our people have turned to Torah for strength. We, with it in our midst, we think about people who need healing, people who need strength. We're going to pray Misha Berach. It's on page 371 of your prayer book. We're going to pause in the middle of the prayer, and I'm going to invite you to call out names of people you're praying for, names of people who need healing, who need strength, who need to recover. We'll pray together.
Bless the ones
son Eitan is currently getting stitches at Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, so if anybody might pray for that, thank you. We'll join together in prayer. We pray for healing for all those named and all those named in our hearts. We're ready for Will to come up and chant some Torah. We're now going to be on chapter 30, verse 1. You're looking at page 571 in your Torah commentary. And we're going to invite some of his family members in person and some of his family members on Zoom. So on Zoom, I'll tell first so that we can see if we can spotlight them. Thank you so much, Nate. We're looking for Elaine Duhl, Jacqueline Milner, and Greg Duhl. And in person, we invite up Frank Leiberman, Joni, Lenny, Caroline, and Eve.
Yamdu, Adorim Shabbat Mitzvah, Sheni Lani Ala Torah. Okay, we see the screen called Greg, and if we can see a few other screens spotlit, please. Again, Elaine Duhl, Jacqueline Milner. If you're there, you can unmute yourself so you can be found in spotlit, so you can be heard.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim Benatan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ve'asita mizbeach mitar ketoret atzei shitim ta'aseh oto. Amar arko ve'amar arko. Rabu ahiyeh ve'amatayim kamato. Bimenu karnata. Tibita oto zahav tachor. Ekago ve'kirata. Savi ve'karata. Ve'asita lo zer zahav savi. Ushte taveot zahav ta'aseh lo. Mitacha lezero. Al shetet salatam ta'aseh al shnei tzidav v'hayat levadim lased oto
Bahema.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Hey, Yasher Koach. Now we're going to invite Linda and Josh, Will's parents, to come up for this aliyah.
Yamdu, Adorim Shabbat Mitzvah, Sheni Lani Ala Torah. Bill is continuing from verse 5, Exodus chapter 30, verse 5.
Baruch Atah Adonai.
Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch
Atah Adonai
Eloheinu Melech Haolam
Asher Bachar
Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Wait. Amen. Vasita et avadim atzei shitim v'tibita otam. Wait.
Yeah, that's right, Zahav.
Zahav. Ve'atata oto livnei haparoche asher alaron ha'edut. Livnei hakaporet asher aha-edut asher yiva'ed lecha shama. Vehitir alav aharon ketoret samim. Baboker vehitiv et
Hanerot yaktirena.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach.
as Will's parents come to his left, we're going to prepare to call him to Torah now as a bar mitzvah. I'm going to chant his Hebrew name, and after I do, he'll take the corner of his talit, and he'll touch where he'll continue and give it a kiss before making the opening blessing. Yamod, 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 Abachol bar mitzvah sheni rachamim, ben lev Yoshua aliyah Torah chazak ve'amatz.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher barak rabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Ufa'alot aharot ehanerot ben ha'arba'im yaktirena ketoret tamid lifnei Adonai l'dorotechem. Lo ta'alu alav ketoret zarah ve'olah minha b'nei sef lo tishu alav v'kiper aharon al karnotav achad b'ashana midam ha'ta yakipuri ahad b'ashana yachaper alav l'dorotechem kodesh kodeshim hu
Adonai. Give it a kiss.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'hei olam Mitzvah b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Yasher koach. All right. We are ready to lift and dress our Torah. We'll invite John Horowitz up to lift the Torah and to dress it. We invite Duhl. We ask everyone to please rise.
Page 370, watch out for the steps.
All right, so here's what happens on Shabbat morning in a synagogue is we hear Torah. We hear Torah chanted. Same Torah that our people chanted more than 2,000 years ago. We hear it chanted, and then we hear Haftarah. We hear the voice of the prophets.
You know what Haftarah means, Rabbi Timoner?
Does it mean it's time to
Well,
launch off to
actually,
class?
some people define it and translate it as a point of departure, sort of a jumping off
I
point.
can see where you're going with this.
I see Karen Hayardeni is there, right? Are you going to be dismissing our Yachad students?
Brilliant, brilliant.
Great, come on over.
Loving the segue.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
So the first group to be dismissed is the third graders and their families. You're going to be all heading across the street to the social hall
Can you hold the microphone closer to your mouth? Thank you.
for the very exciting Jewish naming ceremony. Is this better? Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Hope you can hear me now. So the third graders are going to be dismissed first along with families. Tehillah, over here. We're going to be following rows over here in the corner. So all third graders and families, you are welcome to follow Rose, who's waving at us. And you'll be going across the street to the social hall for the naming ceremony. Next up, we have our 4th grade students only are going to meet Jess, who just came up by the door, and you can follow her to class downstairs. 4th graders are going with Jess. And finally, 5th and 6th graders, you're going to meet Abby in the back, just waving at us in a red shirt. 5th and 6th graders, follow her to go across
Parents,
the
just to
street.
confirm, 5th and 6th grade adults, not adults who are in 5th and 6th grade, but the adults they came with, can stay here, right? And 4th grade adults.
Correct. Only 3rd grade families are invited across the street. Everyone else is invited to stay. 5th and 6th grade families can pick up at 12 o'clock. I have the 10 past. So, yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, as they make their way out, we're going to get Will and Moses to come up as they get ready to chant, half throughout, to chant from the prophet Ezekiel. If you're going to follow along with them as they're doing that, you're going to be looking at page 577. And you're going to hop in the middle to page 579. You're going to look at 577 in your Torah commentary. They're going to be reading from Ezekiel chapter 43, starting at verse 10. And as I was saying, on Shabbat, we hear the words of Torah, and then we hear the voice of a prophet applying Torah in their time, in the way that they feel the message needs to be heard. And what we're doing this morning here, after this, after hearing the voice of the prophets, is we're hearing the voices of our darshanim, of our Torah teachers this morning, who are going to tell us how they think we need to hear Torah here and now. So they're going to chant the opening blessing. Go ahead and get your stuff ready. And chant the opening blessing. They're going to chant from Ezekiel, chapter 43. And then they're going to chant the closing blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai havocher b'torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'yeh hamet b'tzedek. Atah ben Adam hageh v'Yisrael habayit b'chalmu me'avonoteihem u'modedu et toknit v'mechalmu mikol asher asu zrat habayit tunato u'motzah mu'ah hiltzorotah Yehovah Gutam hiltzorotah v'holtorotah hoda'ah otam u'tov v'nehem v'yishmeru ekol tzirato Yehovah Gutam v'yasutam Zot Torah habayit Roshah Kogilulo Saviv Saviv Kodesh Kodeshim Hine Zot Torah habayit Shivat Yamim Tasezer Katak Layom Ufar Yimakar V'ayavim Hatzon Tmimim Yasu Shivat Yamim Yechaveru Tamizbeach V'tichaveru El Tomaru Yadav V'chalu et hayamim v'chayav v'yom hashmini v'cha yashu ha'kohanim ha'mizbeach ha'tozatem v'tramachem v'ratzi tiatem ne'um Adonai Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol ha'olim tzadik b'chol ha'rov ha'ne'eman ha'omer lo yiseh ha'medaber m'chayim shekol devarav emet b'tzedek Al HaTorah, Al HaVadah, Al Nevi'im, V'yom HaShabbat Hazeh, Shenata Talanu, Adonai Eloheinu, B'kedusha L'milucha, L'chol U'tifarer, Al HaKol, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachim Bonim Lach, V'Elohim Lotar, Yisrael Shimcha V'Fi Cholcha, Tamid Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai, Shema, V'kadesh HaShabbat.
Okay. We're ready now. You've got some sweetness in your mouths. It's good. It's like the sweetness of Torah. Now you're going to let those sweet words enter you as Moses and then Will become our teachers this morning. They've been our students all up until now, and now they have something to teach us. And we're totally going to listen to what they have to say.
In my parsha, the Torah explains what high priests had to wear. This included something called the Urim and Tumim, which were used for speaking with God, pomegranates and bells on the hem of their tunic, and an ephod, which was a breastplate that had gems with the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. After reading my portion, I had a few questions. I wondered why the Urim and the Tumim was a specific way to speak with God, and why they didn't come up with a better way. I wondered if the colors of the gems in the ephod meant anything. I noticed that the pomegranates and bells were on the hem of their tunics, and I wondered what that meant. Tractate Barakot from the Talmud, which was written in the 5th century in Babylon, states that even the empty ones among the Jews are full of mitzvot, like a pomegranate is full of seeds. Even when you're not doing the right thing, you're always filled with mitzvot, the way that a pomegranate is filled with seeds. I think the high priests wore this on their tunics because it is reminding them and all the people in the temple who see them to do mitzvah. Nachum Sana, a biblical scholar from the 20th century, disclosed that the priests are set apart from the rest of the people by dedication to the service of God. This means that the high priest had an obligation to serve the people through special duties and restrictions. Maybe one of the duties was that they had to ask God for advice when in need using the Urim and Tumim. Because they were set apart from the people, they had a strict dress code. I wondered if they had to wear the uniforms always or just in temple. I found the answer on thetorah.com. Professor Baruch Chase Schwartz explains that the priests only had to wear the uniforms when inside the sanctuary. He also wrote that they were commanded to do this twice daily, morning and evening. Also, I pondered what all this clothing meant to the priests. Umberto Cassuto, a 20th century Italian rabbi, explains that wearing the ephod, Urim and Tumim, blue robe, and gold plate over the linen headdress made him conscious of his sacred responsibilities. A modern-day connection is the knots on the talis, because they remind us of all the mitzvot we should do. Lastly, something else the priests wore was the ephod with stones in it, and on the stones were engraved the names of the tribes of Israel. According to the Mayana Shel Torah, which was written in 1937 by Rabbi Alexander Zusia Friedman, when the high priest came to ask something of the Urim and Tumim, certain letters from those engraved names would light up. This means that by asking questions of the Urim and Tumim, the priest could talk to God. I find it riveting that they had their whole life controlled by God, and they didn't think that they could do anything differently. It's sort of like they didn't have free will. This differs from our modern-day presidency, in which everyone has a say in their government. It's almost like God was a monarch to the high priest and could decide everything for them. Maybe this benefited the high priest because they didn't have to make any big decisions by themselves. God could do it for them. Learning about priests and their clothing made me consider how this was demonstrated in modern-day life. One way is being in temple versus being at home. For example, when you're in services on Zoom, you might wear your everyday clothes, whereas being in the temple pushes you to wear special clothes like the talit and kippah. Personally, I question if we really need to wear these at all, because today people are more invested in freedom of expression. And where's the freedom of expression in having to wear certain clothes? Why can't we choose what we think is meaningful to us? Another factor is trying to fit in with everyone else. A lot of people don't really want to stand out in the world, so they wear whatever everyone else is wearing. We might do this to draw attention away from ourselves, or we might do this to seem cool. Whatever is meaningful to you, you shouldn't be afraid to honor that belief, and you shouldn't be afraid to wear what expresses you. Shabbat Shalom.
Yeshua, Moses, and now Will.
Have you ever felt the weight of a 20-pound dog on your shoulders? Well, if you were a high priest in ancient Israel, you would feel that weight 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My parsha describes this, along with other details about what the high priests were required to wear to separate themselves from the average person in ancient Israel. You probably think that wearing a lot of heavy clothing and other accessories is weird, but God had reasons and a plan that was not evident at first. I wondered what these reasons were, and I think you'd be surprised at what I found. The first thing that I'm going to be talking about is why the high priest's clothes were significantly heavier than everyone else's. Rabbi J.H. Hirsch, the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, from 1913 to 1946, explained that the items worn by the high priest were really heavy to constantly remind them of their very heavy duties. A lot of people looked up to the high priest and relied on them for advice, leadership, and prayer. Just wearing something like a kippah, for example, can remind you that you're Jewish, but you often forget you're wearing it. With 20 pounds on your shoulders, you never forget what you're wearing, and more importantly, why you are wearing it. The heavy clothes weren't the only thing high priests wore on their bodies. That's right, there are also bells on the bottom of their robes. So now you're walking around wearing 20 pounds of clothes and bells ringing with every step. Jacob Zvi Mecklenburg, a 19th century German rabbi, explained that the high priest not only had to be reminded to perform their many responsibilities, they also needed to be reminded to perform them well. That is where the bells came into play. Just like it is hard to forget about the weight of your clothes, it is also hard to forget about the constant ringing of bells with every single step. So now you're wearing a 20-pound robe with bells around your ankles. There couldn't possibly be more, right? Well, there was. The high priest wore breastplates with 12 different gems. Pinchas Pele, a 20th century Israeli rabbi, explained that each gem was engraved with a tribe name. Like the heavy robe, the gem-covered breastplate reminded the high priest of who they represented, as each gem represented one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Additionally, Pinchas Pele believed that these were strategically placed over the heart to show how the high priest should care for the people. When leaders make decisions for millions of others, it is important that they have a constant reminder of the millions who depend on them and are affected by their decisions. In present times, we often see political leaders become self-serving and arrogant once in office, forgetting about their many responsibilities to the people who elected them. For example, there are politicians who actively encourage the storming of the Capitol despite the resulting danger and violence. Also, there are plenty of anti-vax politicians who are vaccinated themselves. These politicians were dishonest, hypocritical, and acted irresponsibly when they encouraged their followers not to get vaccinated. It becomes clear that God was onto something. Wearing a 20-pound robe, bells, and a breastplate probably does not make sense today, but like the high priest, our leaders also need constant reminders of their responsibilities, and we are those reminders. That is why we have to ring the bells of our leaders. We have to remind them of what and who they stand for. There are many ways we can hold our leaders accountable. By participating in protests, attending rallies, posting on social media, and even just voting, we can make a difference. One issue that I learned about in school and became interested in is environmental racism. This is the concept that toxic, high-polluting power and sewage plants are located largely in minority communities and communities of color. After making a video about environmental racism as part of a school project, I wrote a letter to the EPA requesting that they take action on this issue because they are not doing enough to address this problem and it is hurting millions of people. I'm going to continue to do my part and make my voice heard so our leaders take notice. Together we can remind our leaders to look out for the millions of people they represent. Shabbat Shalom.
Yeshua will. Moses and Will, you got a portion about clothing. What do you do with a Torah portion about clothing? Will, you went with weight. The heaviness of the priestly garments as a reminder of the responsibility of leadership. The ways that some leaders fail to live up to that responsibility. The ways that we can demand that they do. I love what you're doing around environmental racism, and I love your call to action to all of us to hold our leaders accountable, to ring the bell as if they had the bell on the hem of their robe. Moses, you were fascinated by the question of external authority. The idea that the Israelites and the priests used their garments to turn to God for decision-making instead of making their own choices. Comparing that to the pressure some might feel to wear a kippah or a talit while in synagogue, and even more broadly, the ways that we might dress to fit in or gain approval instead of expressing ourselves freely through our attire. First, a clarification. No one at CBE has to wear a kippah or a talit ever. Freedom of religious expression or abstention from religious expression is extremely important and a central value here. No one ever has to do, say, or wear anything that doesn't feel right to them while in this sanctuary. And we at CBE are kind of known for people wearing any clothes they want, from formal wear to shorts or jeans. But sometimes dressing up can feel like a burden, but sometimes it can elevate us. And sometimes choosing, I'm someone who often chooses to wear a kippah, sometimes it can lift us out of the ordinary, which is also what Shabbat is meant to do. That's not what I'm going to talk about. A Hasidic teacher known as Meor Einayim, Rabbi Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl, imagines the priestly clothing as a parallel to God's act of clothing God's self. He draws upon the Kabbalistic tradition that God is the Ein Sof, the limitless, the infinite. And when God wanted to create the world, God found that the finite world couldn't hold God's infinite nature. So God had to shrink God's self, it's called tzimtzum, in order to create the world. The first step was to transform into light. Even light was a constriction for God. Yet, it was too much for the world to bear. The world couldn't hold that intensity of light, and world after world shattered. So God garbed God's self in Torah. Torah became God's clothing, and the letters of the Torah became the building blocks for the world. But to make the Torah something that human beings could relate to or understand, God had to endure many layers of limitation, becoming more and more constricted, concrete, bounded, dense, until the language could make sense to people, and specifically to the generation of the Torah, speaking in their idiom, in their worldview, in images and concepts that they could comprehend. Now, our Torah portion does not begin with clothing this week. It actually begins with the Ner Tamid, the eternal light, the light that burned in the tabernacle and that we find in every synagogue. אתה תצווה את בני ישראל ויקחו אליך שמן זית זך כתית למאור להעלות נר תמיד. And you shall instruct the Israelites to bring you clear oil of beaten olives for lighting, for kindling a ner tamid, an eternal light. What we must do when we encounter Torah, Meor Einayim says, is beat it like the Israelites were commanded to beat the olives, so that its solidified, concretized, coarsened form can become pure again and ultimately can become light. When you see something in Torah that feels limited, well, it might be because it is. We're supposed to struggle with Torah, beating and pressing the words and phrases and ideas until light emerges, something that gives us a glimpse of the infinite. That process is called Dodd, awareness. And Meor Einayim teaches that God's wisdom, chokhmah, is a light hidden deep within and can only be seen when we use Dodd, awareness, to beat and press the forms of the text that limit it and that limit us. That's what we do when we write a Devar Torah. That's what each of you did. We massage the text again and again until some hidden light shines through. I think of all of the layers of clothing that the priest was under, and how behind that breastplate and that ephod and that robe and those stones and those bells was a human being, a real person, not just a leader or a figurehead, a person with fears and wants, longings and disappointments. That clothing could be a shield to avoid responsibility, as you taught us, Will. It could also be a shield to hide behind, like you taught us, Moses. We sometimes hide in garments that show the world what we think it wants to see, instead of what's really inside. And sometimes we hide our light, our brightest, truest self, our best ideas or creations, or aspects of our being that we think might be too intense, or raw, or uncool, or embarrassing. Sometimes we worry that our inside reality is too much for others to handle, in the way that God was too much for the world to handle. We fear that if people knew or saw what we were really like, our sorrow, our loneliness, our anger, our insecurity, our weaknesses, our longings, our meltdowns, we would be too much for the world. But we are not God. The world can hold all of our being and all of our light. tell I've been reading a lot of Brene Brown recently. And I know I'm late to this party. It's probably, everybody knows, maybe a lot of people know, that she talks about vulnerability, which essentially is taking down our armor, taking down all those layers of limiting garb, and showing each other how we really feel, admitting mistakes, sharing ideas and creations that feel precious to us, and therefore risky. Knowing that people might criticize us, might knock us down for it, risking it anyway. Letting ourselves be a bit exposed. With boundaries, where it's appropriate, when it's mutual. Her research shows that people are drawn to others when they are vulnerable. When they share their emotions and tell their truths, we recognize the courage in it. And we instinctively know that when one person is vulnerable, it creates greater safety for everyone else. Just a little more room to be open, to be real. But when it's our turn to be vulnerable, most of us instinctively hide behind our garments of one kind or another. We're afraid of people seeing the unpolished version of us, uncurated, unguarded. A lot of us have shame about things we really don't have to be ashamed of. Shame comes from our evolution as a social species to protect us from exclusion. It's the voice that tells us that something about us is wrong or inadequate, it should be hidden or else we'll be rejected. But often it's not true. And often the hiding is much worse than the exposure would be. Just as we must press on the hardened, limiting layers of the Torah to find the pure light within, this is a good week, in Shabbat Tetzaveh, to ask ourselves, how are we shielded, buffered, garbed in limiting layers to protect others from our full light, to protect ourselves from exposure? How do we hide? What creations, ideas, truths do we secretly wish we could share with the world if only we knew it would be accepted, if only we knew that it would be safe? In addition to all of the clothing we've spoken about, the high priest had a headdress with the words, Kadosh L'Adonai, holy to God, on his forehead. My rabbinical school teacher of blessed memory, Rabbi Richard Levy, taught us to walk through the world seeing those words on the forehead of every human being we met. May we find the courage to beat down the shielding garb, to show ourselves, trusting that our hidden shames are actually our light, that we are good enough, blemishes and all, holy to God even, and worthy of acceptance and love for who and how we are. Shabbat Shalom. Now I get to invite Will and Moses up to the ark for a special blessing. As we return the Torah, I invite everyone to please rise.
Page 370. bottom of page 586, Aleinu L'Shavea. Aleinu L'Shavea, Adon Mako, Ateinu Na Leotzeh Bereshit, Shelo Asanu Begoyei Ha'aratzot, Elo Samanu Kemishpechot Ha'adama, Shelo Sam Melkeinu Kahet, Ve'yon Aleinu Kevod Amona, Va'anachnu Ro'im, U'mishkachim, U'odim Lifneihem, Alei Hamachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Clap your hands,
We always end our time together by calling our hearts and our minds to memory, thinking about the people we love who are no longer here with us. And I know that Moses' family is remembering David and Dorothy Markowitz, Harry and Sarah Zelk, George and Jeanette Dodd, his great-grandparents, and Marilyn Markowitz, his grandmother. And Will's family, and they're also remembering his great-aunts and great-uncle, Carol Steinberg, Marcia, and Saul Herman. And Will's family remembering his grandfathers, Sheldon Glatterman and Stuart Duhl. And it's Stuart Duhl's talit that Will is wearing today. Blessed memory. If you are in the first week since the death of someone you love, if you're in Shiva, we invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering. If you're on Zoom, you can write the name in the chat. And if you're in Shloshim, the first 30 days since the death of someone you love, we invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering. And if you're in Shana, the first year since the death of someone you love, we invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering. And if this is a yard sale for you, we invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering the anniversary of the death. We all rise in company with the mourners in our midst. As we remember these recent losses in our congregational community: Gilda Frisch, mother of Jeffrey Frisch, mother-in-law of Stacy Ovadia Frisch, grandmother of Claudia and Evan. Isaac Steinberg, father of Stephanie Steinberg, father-in-law of Daniel Schachter, and grandfather of Alana. Raymond Feinland, father of Laura Feinland Katz, father-in-law of Stephen Katz, and grandfather of Joshua. David Sarfati, father of Jared Sarfati, and father-in-law of Elena Satin. Ellen Dean, mother of Karen Bowers, mother-in-law of Nick Bowers, and grandmother of Duncan and Eli. Edward Rouslin, father of Larry Rouslin, father-in-law of Laura Dahlheim, and grandfather of Sylvie and Henry. And these yard sites: Kenneth Altschuler, Ray Barron, Irma Berkowitz, Abraham Besthoff, Norman Blaustein, Louise Brenner Lowenstein, David Brown, Stephen Mark Cohen, Edwin Cohen, Henry Corbeau, Robert Dale, Jean Dale, Max David, Jeanette Lechner Diamond, Isabel Etlinger, Claudia Ezrol, Leo Fisher, Stanley Fishman, Daisy Forster, Irene Goldberger Frankel, Isidore Gluck, Isidore Goldberg, Marion Goldstein, Bert Hockman, Sophie Kelly, Saul Kolikoff, Annabelle Kuta, Tom Lamb, Hulda Less, Sam Levine, Mildred Lifshitz, Elizabeth Levitt, William Harris Lyons, Jack Nachtinger, Edgardo Martinez, Elsie Mass, Solomon May, Hannah Messing, Benjamin Franklin Moss, Elizabeth Christina Nabel, Deborah Nadich, Moses Nias, Sabina Oppenberg, Jenny Oppenheimer, Eleanor Roper, Alvin Rosenberg, George Rosenthal, Andre Schlesinger, Lawrence Schwartz, Max Selig, Adele Silverman, Renee Sontag, William Spencer, Alan Starr, Cora Stein, Jerome Stein, Alfred Sweet, Miriam Ustin, Joseph Wank, Ursula Wayne, Aaron Wexler. Holding them all together, we say Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be an everlasting blessing. As we turn to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabba, be'alma divrachu te v'yamlich machute, b'chayachon of yomechon uv'chayed chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalahu v'yizman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach be'alam u'almei u'almayah, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shmei t'kudshah v'richu, le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amirat be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. And one makes peace in the high places, make peace for all who mourn. We say together.
Oseh shalom b'mramav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Oseh shalom b'mramav,
until we're fully done finishing. Let's stay in your seats. We're going to sing the Shabbat now. Hey kids, back up. We'll come soon. Wait, I know you can do it.
Kein berach Adonai et yom HaShabbat, v'ykadsheu sabri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei beri hagafen.
Can someone bring some challah over here? So we can have challah bread and challah.
While we're waiting to make motzi, now is a good time to say that right after we make motzi, Moses' friends and family and guests are going to go across the street to the ballroom. Will's friends and family and guests are going to find Kiddush to-go bags on the sidewalk right outside. Everyone else is welcome to stick around and to help yourselves to Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Shabbat